Hey friends, hope the morning's treating you well. Hope you got your coffee if you want some. I got mine from a local coffee shop. I was going to talk about John Lennon, Instant Karma. We all shine on. I'm going to talk about that this morning. I was going to do it out in the field, but it is so damn cold and windy and snow everywhere. And I thought, hell with it, I'll try it here in the car. So we'll see how this goes. But I saw this was the anniversary this week of John Lennon writing and recording Instant Karma. It's January 27th, 1970. Now, what's interesting about this, besides it being a great song and a great performance, Lennon wrote it in the morning. He wrote Instant Karma in the morning. They recorded it that afternoon, mixed it that night, and then 10 days later, it was in stores. It was pressed and in stores, which is pretty damn amazing. I mean, it's really amazing. So imagine how hard it would be, like with just the problems we have nowadays, just getting vinyl made takes months and months and months and months. Now, if you're a Beatle, it's a little bit easier. You know, I'm sure he was able to grease some wheels along the way. But imagine writing a song, being so confident about it. You know, we all get excited when we write a song and we think it's pretty good. So we might record it the same day. The Beatles did that sort of thing a fair amount. But to actually commit, he had to commit like the next day to try to get it out within 10 days or whatever, to get it released. To just commit to that says a lot. That's pretty amazing. And I guess if you're a Beatle, you're pretty damn confident about your abilities and you think, hell with it, let's roll with it. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the background of that particular recording session and that song. Before I get too far into this, I should say, man, when people are down the rabbit hole about the Beatles, they are way down the rabbit hole. And there are some of you who are probably watching this who know 10 times more than me about the Beatles, and that's cool. Maybe I'll learn something from you. That's cool. But just try to hang out, man. We're having coffee on a Saturday morning, That's just all this is a little bit of fun and something to talk about. I should say who played on the record. John Lennon played, he had lead vocals and acoustic guitar and piano and backing vocals. George Harrison played the electric guitar, piano, and backing vocals. And before I go too far on that, I saw a picture. I'm going to talk about some quotes that they have up at johnlennon.com here in a second. Maybe I'll talk about that now. At johnlennon.com, they have done a little bit of a history of that song. A lot of quotes from the people who were in that recording session, which I love that seems to be happening a lot on big artists' websites. I saw that Bob Dylan has a lot of interviews that particular people who he thinks are talented journalists, he will go ahead and just do an interview with them and they'll publish it on his website, where you don't have to wait for some big media outlet to decide that you're worthy. Just be your own press. I really, really dig that. And I dig that a lot of these classic artists are telling their history. And they have the money and the wherewithal to do it. They can go ahead and just hire archivists to just tell their history on their website. And johnlennon.com has a fair amount of that. And I'll jump into that here in a little bit. But so there's a picture on johnlennon.com of John Lennon playing a J200, a Gibson J200 that was belonged to George Harrison, is what the caption says. That made me wonder, because there's a J200 that George Harrison had that he played on While My Guitar Gently Weeps. He played on, I believe it was the White Album. There was a lot of pictures and such floating around of him playing that on that. He gave that to Bob Dylan as a present, which is a really cool gesture people used to do way back when. Maybe rich people still do that, It's one of the fun things about being a rich person is you can just give away things like really nice guitars. And I wouldn't know anything about that, but I hear it's a pretty good thing good work if you can get it. But that J200 that he played on While My Guitar Gently Weeps, He gave that to Bob Dylan, and it's the same guitar that's on Bob Dylan's holding on the cover of Nashville Skyline. And just a little bit of trivia there. Now, I was wondering when I saw John Lennon playing it in that photo on johnlennon.com, I was wondering, is that the same guitar on Instant Karma? But I believe that the dates don't match up, because Nashville Skyline, I believe, was released earlier than when this recording session was. So I don't think that jives. And why would George Harrison only have one, Gibson J200 or whatever? But anyway, on bass was Klaus Voormann, and he had a rather long history with the Beatles, and lived with some of them, and met them when they were playing in Hamburg. And he went on to play on a lot of cool stuff. He's the bass player on You're So Vain, Carly Simon, and I guess Lou Reed's Transformer, a lot of other stuff. But Alan White played the drums, and I think the drums on that, it says a lot about John Lennon, that strange fill that's just all out of time and stumbling, that Lennon was cool with that. I used to hate that fill. I mean, I really used to hate it. Now I like it. But I can honestly tell you, if a drummer did that and we were recording that song, I would look at it and be like, what in the hell are you doing, But that's my own uptightness. But it says a lot about Alan White, that he was able to just get out of time on that fill and come right back in. And there are places in the drum when he's playing the verses where he'll throw in just like one little bit, just tiny little skip on the snare. And man, the excitement goes through the roof. It just really has a great, great energy on that drum track. I wish I knew, the drummers out there probably have a name for whatever happens, and you know what I'm talking about. It's really subtle, but listen to the drums, and you can hear it behind Lennon's voice, and it just really ups the excitement and the energy of the thing. It's really cool. But Alan White was the cat. He's in Yes, and so he's obviously a really freaking good drummer. Some of the Yes songs that he played on are my absolute favorite Yes songs. Roundabout, I like the hits, man. I like those early hits. I've seen All Good People, a Long Distance Run Around. I remember a trip to Nashville about 5 or 6 months ago where I pulled those up and just cranked them. And that's a very un-Otis thing to dig, but there's something about that early Yes stuff. The stuff that became hits, or even Starship Trooper, so stuff like I really, really, really dig, and also think the bass sounds amazing on that. I'm getting off subject, but I believe was that a 4001 Rickenbacker bass, and it sounds like it's going into an SVT, and it just sounds absolutely great, the drums on that. But anyway, I'm getting a little off track. But Billy Preston played the organ and the piano, and I mean, anything with Billy Preston on it is going to be gold. Yoko's doing backing vocals. Mal Evans doing chimes, hand claps, and backing vocals. And there's a whole bunch of people doing backing vocals also. But if we go back to the article on johnlennon.com, John Lennon says, I wrote it for breakfast, recorded it for lunch, and we're putting it out for dinner. I think he told the press that a few different times. George Harrison says, John phoned me up one morning in January and said, I've written this tune and I'm going to record it tonight and have it pressed up and out tomorrow. I guess when you're John Lennon, you can definitely believe you can do anything to have it out the next day. Says that's the whole point. Instant karma, So I was in. I said, okay, I'll see you in town. I was in town with Phil Spector. I said to Phil, why don't you come to the session? There were just 4 people. John played piano, I played acoustic guitar, Klaus Voormann on bass, and Alan White on drums. We recorded the song and brought it out that week, mixed instantly by Phil Spector. John Lennon says, "It was great because I wrote it in the morning on the piano, went to the office and sang it. I thought, hell, let's do it, and we booked the studio. Phil came in and said, 'How do you want it?' I said, 1950s, but now." I love that. I really do. And he said, "Right," and boom, I did it in just about 3 takes. He played it back, and there it was. I said, "A bit more bass, that's all," and off we went. I believe there were actually 10 takes, is what I read somewhere else, but John says 3. But I absolutely love, how do you want it? 1950s, but now. I'm going to repeat that at some point. Like if Buddy Holly was around today, how would he do this? Andy Stevens was the tape op. It was recorded at Abbey Road. And to be honest with you, the tape op is probably the tape operator, the people recording it are the ones that remember what really happened, is what I would say. Andy Stevens says, "John kept trying to pull him to the fore. Spector stood back and didn't volunteer or dictate much at all. Then John Lennon really pulled him out. Come on, Phil." Once he got into his stride, it was like all hell breaking loose. Tape machines, tape loops, tape delays, echo chambers, you name it. The Phil Spector wall of sound. Alan White, the drummer, said, "I had an idea of what I wanted to do. One of those things where you're playing a rhythm, but when it comes to a drum break, you play in a different meter." It came naturally, and John said, "Alan, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. It's wonderful." That's the part that I was talking about earlier, that I would say, "Alan, what in the hell are you doing? Don't do it," But that's the difference. When you're John Lennon, man, you just go for it. Klaus Voormann, the bass player, I should say, he also did the artwork on Revolver and a lot of other stuff. I don't remember if I said that earlier. But Klaus Voormann, Alan White, now I knew he can play. He played wonderful drums, and we thought the track sounded good. We went into the control room, stood at the back, and it started, and it was so incredible. The sound was just like we had heard in the headphones, but with all these incredible effects. Then I knew it, because I'd heard that sound, and I thought, this is the Phil Spector sound. It was very, very simple. He's got these effects on the pianos and these wavering sounds. The bass and the kick drum were completely clean. The voice was more or less clean, so that was typical for Spector. And I love Phil Spector. I loved him then. From then on, it was incredible. Beautiful. I loved it. That was Klaus Voormann. When he was saying they put all these effects on, this would be a very, very clean mix. We're just talking reverb and some delay. By today's standards, that would be a very, very basic recording. And I'm not a lover of the Phil Spector wall of sound. And in all honesty, when I listen to Instant Karma, I don't think of it as that. I think this is a really, really great sounding recording, and it doesn't. Maybe to someone else this sounds very Phil Spector, and I'll, that's cool. That's cool. I won't argue with you on it, but this doesn't sound as Phil Spector as other things. I think it sounds great, and I think the slapback delay that John Lennon just seemed to always want on his vocals, it was a Sun Records. It was a 1950s Sun Records sound, and he loved it on his vocals. And man, it sounds great on this one. So this is the drummer Alan White again. I also played piano with a few people. Phil Spector wanted to have everything doubled up and made it sound like one. So it was John and myself on one piano, and the other piano had Klaus playing, just layering all these different pianos. And then he'd never put just one tambourine on a record. He had to have 15 of them. John Lennon says, there were all sorts of strange people on the session. The whole of a London discotheque was singing on it, and we used doormen and roadies and everybody to make the backing track, and just to get that feel that we're all in it together. And I skipped down a little bit. Billy Preston says, John wanted some people to sing background, so I got in his Rolls Royce with Mal Evans, you gotta love Mal, and we went to the clubs and got everybody to come on down. We had a great time. Alan White says, these people must have been drinking all night. They came in, and I remember there was Klaus, myself, and John conducting. I thought, this is going to be a total mess. People are going to be out of tune, out of time, and anyhow, we went through one run-through, and I went, oh my God. We all looked at each other, and we couldn't believe it. They were all singing in time and in tune. We got that done within an hour, and we had a huge backing. But no one went back to the club. That, too, was very instant about Instant Karma. A little side thing, this reminds me of if you ever go to a show in Nashville and somebody like has a little, you could be in a club with 50 people, and somebody will have a sing-along portion to their song. When they get the audience to sing along, you hear this complex harmonies going on because it's Nashville. Everybody's a damn singer, and you have all these harmonies. If you have a third time when it comes around, everybody's just showing off what they can do, and that's one of the beauties of Nashville, I guess. But I digress. So John Lennon says, everybody was talking about karma all of a sudden, always going on about it, especially in the 60s. And it occurred to me that karma is instant as well. The action-reaction is what it's about. I'm fascinated by commercials and promotion as an art form, so instant karma was like instant coffee, except for presenting it in a new form. It's like they say about karma. You have to come back and go through that thing again. If you don't get it right in this lifetime, well, those laws that are cosmically talked about apply down to the minutest detail of life. So that's John. And then Klaus Verman says, I think we did 2 BBC Top of the Pops performances, and there was a guy standing there playing with us who played a bass too. John says, BP Fallon playing the bass guitar. That's concept art. If you guys have seen this clip, they went on Top of the Pops and I did this, and the only thing live was John's vocal. Everybody else is just, playing whatever. And I looked at it this morning. I hadn't seen this in years. I watched it this morning, and the guy on bass, it says here it's BP Fallon. I thought it was Richie Blackmore. I'm like, well, is that Richie Blackmore on bass? That'd be a weird thing to see him with John Lennon. And he's got a cool cowboy hat, and he's wearing a vest. It just kind of, when Richie Blackmore has the Witchmaster General hat going on, it was that era, looking like him. And for a split second, I thought, I could tell he wasn't playing bass at all. He just really, it's obvious the guy didn't know how to play bass. And I thought that was cool. John Lennon's like, hell with it. If we're not really playing, let's show people we're not really playing. And Yoko was sitting there with a blindfold, and I never thought about what the blindfold was, but it says this here in a second. But BP Fallon says, I can't play bass, but it's better than whacking a tambourine into John's left ear and almost putting him off his singing. And he laughs. Alan White says, purely the fact that John and Yoko were doing Top of the Pops became a big spectacle. It was pretty amazing. Yoko was knitting, which was pretty weird. She had a Kotex blindfold on for some of it. He loved her way of expressing her art, and it seemed to be part of the music at the time. I've seen that clip so many times, and I never realized that was a Kotex. I just never really realized it. And why not, man? Have fun with it. John Lennon says, I enjoyed the Instant Karma thing because there were the people right there, and we were talking about the fact that she was knitting. Because we did everything together. I'm doing Instant Karma with a backing tape with live vocals, and she's just sitting there knitting this scarf. And there was some review the next day. How dare she sit there knitting? Well, we wanted to be together in her contribution to that event. Instead of having a smoke bomb, a colored light, or a psychedelic light, Yoko only knitted, you see, and that's what, and that was like, what are they doing? Yoko says, knitting is something very interesting. It's almost like knitting a web of the mind. I was blindfolding myself with a Kotex. I can't believe I've said Kotex 3 times. There was 4 right there. And knitting something that was going nowhere, while a man symbolizing our future was singing, "We all shine on. Yes, we all shine, but for that, we have to take the blindfold off and stop knitting. When we don't know what we're knitting, it was my way of showing what we women must free ourselves from. The blindfold means to me everybody in the world is blind and trying their best." I like that sentiment. We're all blind and we're trying the best we can. I like that sentiment. I'll be honest. As a kid, I didn't know what the hell he was singing about, if it had some big meaning or whatever. I just liked the song, and that's enough. And when you grow up, you realize John Lennon's talking about something more. Maybe he's not living up to it, maybe he is, but he's talking about it and he's trying. And I like that. And I guess that was the first #1 hit by a Beatle, like in their solo careers. And the Beatles officially broke up 2 months after that was released. And I think that Paul announced that, and but John, I think, had already left, whether he told them or not earlier. But I dig it, man. And in that video, Mal Evans is up there, playing tambourine and with that big smile. And it's just an easy dude to love, But you guys dig that? What's your favorite John Lennon solo song? What's your favorite of the Beatles solo stuff? The older I get, the more I appreciate all the McCartney stuff. I really dig it. There's so much great stuff, by all the Beatles. What's the Ringo? The no, I don't smoke it no more. Tired of waking up on the floor. Remember that one? When I was a little kid, I used to sing that. I'd be in the back seat of the car, hearing it on AM radio and singing that. And, no thank you, please. It only makes me sneeze. I didn't know what the hell that meant. I just liked it. It was fun. That's what's fun about music. It can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. And it doesn't have to mean anything at all to you. Before I shut this thing down, I want to say, do you guys remember when the Beatles played on the roof and the redheaded kid who was holding John's lyrics and was always around with all of that? I interviewed him. His name is Kevin Harrington, and I interviewed him about a year ago. And there's a few videos online where he's talking about working for the Beatles as a roadie and Mal Evans and living with George Harrison and all that. And I'm going to put one of those up here. Watch that stuff if you haven't seen it. It's really, really good stuff. And he had a lot of great stories. And I made a few different videos, but I'll put one up here. And I'll see you somewhere down the road. Much love to you.